fellow tamers and Digidestined, it's Mike, AKA Synaku from Overground, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be covering my second place locals Blue Ancient Garurumon deck profile. Now, Ancient Garurumon is a deck that's kind of been on a lot of our radars, I think, for a little while, as soon as we knew that we were getting our hands on the promo Lobomon, as well as the Ancient Greymon with the promo Lagoonimon. These were cards that Japan didn't actually get until their BT4 kind of format, that era of play, but we actually got them a little bit earlier in our card pool cycle. So we're actually kind of able to put together decks earlier on in the card game's lifespan that the Japanese meta didn't actually get a chance to see until later on. So while we don't necessarily have the same card pool that they had at that time, I still think it's worth investing in and trying out some of these newer strategies with the current card pool we have now, just to kind of get our feet wet and get a feel for it. So unfortunately, while I'm still missing the crux of the Garurumon support that I would get in something like BT5, with all the additional Garurumon Omnimon / support that comes out in that set, I still feel like this was a good first draft for what Ancient Garurumon is capable of, and I was really excited to take it with me into an event. Regardless, this was a pretty small event, not gonna lie. There was only about maybe 20 or so people for this locals, but I'm really happy with how the deck performed. I was able to take this to the finals, where we lost, unfortunately, to Imperial Dramon, mostly because we couldn't draw a Mega. We just, 6-7 turns, just couldn't draw a top end. We got so far behind, and at that point, it's Imperial Dramon, so he's just swinging for the fences every turn. He was able to take us down, and then unfortunately, in the following game, he had Puppetmon as well as double Lobomon back-to-back to finish us off on top of his Tamers. But it is what it is. All in all, though, this deck was super fun to pilot. I was super happy with the results, and I'm really excited to share the list with you guys today. So let's go through the card by card, and I'll kind of talk about why certain choices are in here, because I'll be honest, there are a lot of strange ones. There's a lot of cards in here that you've probably A, never seen before, or B, you've seen 6-7 months ago and you thought this card's trash and you just kind of threw it in with your bulk. So let's talk about what we see here and how it kind of compensates to the overall narrative and strategy of how I feel Ancient Garurumon should play as it stands right now. So we'll look at the eggs. We're playing 4 copies of Upamon and 1 copy of Digimon. Now, in all honesty, the eggs for this deck are largely irrelevant. I do want to get as much draw power as possible, though, just so I can turbo into a lot of these pieces. Unfortunately, Ancient Garurumon himself is not searchable by any stretch of the imagination. Despite him working with hybrid cards, we can't get him with something like Strapimon, so that forces us to play additional draw power or ways to kind of cycle into it to see it faster, and that's why we're also playing 4 copies of Davis, as you'll see at the end of the deck, just to kind of max out on that consistency. And we don't play a lot of jammers, or we don't play a lot of opportunities to get us into jamming, so we're only playing 1 copy of this jamming Vmon, or Demi-Vmon rather. So Upamon just kind of seemed like the best logical choice to kind of increase our consistency in a deck that doesn't necessarily care full-heartedly for what its kind of bottom end should be. In one draft of the deck, I was actually also playing the BT2 Demi-Vmon. This is the where if a Digimon unsuspends during the main phase, it actually gains 1,000. That came up randomly, but either way, I think Upamon's still the best call for now, just to have more opportunities to draw on a more consistent basis. And to complement that, we're also playing 4 copies of the BT2 Vmon. And this is the same thing as with the Demi-V. If our Digimon gets unsuspended during the active phase, so if it unsuspends itself at any point during the turn, outside of the unsuspend phase proper, we get to draw an additional card. And for those unfamiliar how the Ancient Garurumon works, I'll talk briefly about his effect right now, so that way the rest of the deck kind of makes sense as we kind of go through the rest of the pile. So Ancient Garurumon reads, when attacking, once per turn, unsuspend up to 2 of your Digimon with Garurumon in their name or hybrid in their forms. So because Ancient Garurumon has Garurumon itself in its name, that means on attack declaration, it will immediately unsuspend, and that way you can trigger a lot of these extra bonus effects that we play in the deck that says when a Digimon unsuspends in your main phase, do X. So the ability to kind of put those inheritables in this deck was kind of a no-brainer, because you're playing a deck that's automatically main focus is to unsuspend itself regularly. And so we're playing other Digimon that also unsuspend themselves, so we can take advantage of those extra effects as well, so we can create more consistency in that kind of overall narrative of the deck. Following up on the rookies, we're playing 4 copies of Strabimon. Strabimon is your hybrid searcher. On play, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You get to add any Digimon with hybrid in their form, and or 1 blue tamer added to your hand. So this accelerates our access into Davis. This also accelerates our access into either copy of Lobomon here and our Beowulfmon over here. And as mentioned previously, unfortunately, it cannot get Ancient Garurumon. Despite the fact that it works with hybrids, it is not a hybrid itself. But Strabimon can also get extra copies of itself, and just ties together with the overall synergy and consistency of the deck. We're playing 3 copies of the memory-gaining inheritable Gomamon. This is here because we're generally going to be evolving into our raising area and kind of staying there for maybe 2 to 3 turns. And when we move out, if we ideally land on an Ancient Garurumon in our top end, Ancient Garurumon already gives us value if it's destroyed, so by having something else in it that'll give us additional value for it being destroyed, it disincentivizes our opponent from ever actually going after it. It also means that if it does end up getting destroyed in security, we can extend our turn a little bit longer, because not only do we actually replace the Ancient Garurumon itself, because on deletion we get to play a level 4 blue or lower hybrid from our hand for free, we can also give ourselves more memory to potentially go up into another stack or just threaten another play altogether with this Gomamon. And to round out our rookies, we're playing 2 copies of the Draw Gabumon on play. Again, just for consistency purposes, we just want to play as many cards as possible in this deck that help us cycle through. So, on to the champions. This is a weird one, because we're not actually playing any one-cost champions at all. So no Garurumon, no Topiamon, nothing for pure speed. Every champion in this deck has a purpose, but every champion in this deck is very powerful in their own right, despite the fact that they actually cost 2 to evolve. So we're playing 4 copies of the promo Lobomon. And this Lobomon has 2 effects. The first one is that when digivolving, we can actually pay 1, to digivolve into Ancient Garurumon immediately. And if we do that, we have to delete it at the end of the turn. And this is another kind of cool, cute combo that goes with the Gomamon as well. So that way, when we do digivolve into our Lobomon, if we evolve into Gomamon, if we evolve our Lobomon over Gomamon, and then we have Ancient Garurumon over this Lobomon that we kind of like flash warp digivolve into, rather, that means at the end of our turn, we can actually give our opponent 1 less memory to work with as well. And then its other effect in the inheritable is that if this Digimon were to digivolve into Ancient Garurumon, we can actually reduce the memory cost of the Ancient Garurumon by 2, which means it's now evolving for a cost of 3 as opposed to 5. And we're generally using that effect more often in this deck, because we are kind of building up an entire stack all the way up into Ancient Garurumon. However, if you have the opportunity to flash your Lobomon into an Ancient Garurumon, by all means take it. That's always going to be 2 free checks. That's going to guarantee float into another Digimon as well. We're playing 3 copies of the regular Lobomon. This is another search target that we can get off Strabimon, and it's another way to help us close games out a little bit faster, because we can evolve them over our Davises to kind of sneak in extra damage against our opponent. Then we're playing 3 copies of the promo Box Topper Garurumon from both 1.0 and 1.5. And this is one of those cards that you probably either haven't seen because you probably haven't pulled it out of your Box Topper packs, or that you pulled it, read it, and then you kind of threw it in a box and you never looked at it again. And what this Garurumon does is that, not once per turn, which is very, very important, when attacking, if this Digimon has Garurumon in its name, draw 1. And I think you can already see where this is going. So if we have an Ancient Garurumon on top of the stack with this Garurumon, we can attack with Ancient Garurumon, unsuspended immediately. We'll draw 1 with this Garurumon, and when we declare an attack again after we suspend it a second time, we get to draw 1 more card. Combo that with Vmon, now that we get to draw 3 cards in 1 turn. So this Garurumon enables us to consistently cycle through our deck, to constantly make sure that we have the pieces in our hand, to constantly keep building more stacks up and keep putting more pressure on our opponent. And it combos with another Garurumon that we're going to see in just 2 more cards. So we're also playing 2 copies of Grizzlymon just to give us more protective options against more rush-style decks, or against decks that we need kind of that cushion, that buffer, to just make sure that we don't get kind of our security run over, because our game plan is to run over our opponent's security. This deck's very aggressive and aims to kind of end the turn within maybe 1 or 2 turns when we can get fully set up, and we just need to have a couple blockers in play to make sure that we can survive long enough to make sure that that game plan succeeds 100%. So, talking about other Garurumons, here's the other promo Box Topper Garurumon that you get in the same pack as this Garurumon here. And this Garurumon, it has 2 effects. The first one is that when attacking once per turn, if you have Garurumon in its source, you can actually unsuspend this Digimon immediately. And the second effect is that if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, which is the inheritable, the Digimon that it evolves over top of gets security attack +1. And because we're drawing so many cards so often in this deck, there's rarely ever going to be a time that you're going to have less than 8 cards in hand. And if you build your stack up properly, you can attack with 7 cards in hand, draw up to 8 on the attack declaration, and then this will automatically be live. So now we're looking at a potential stack. If we can get like if we can get Vmon, Garurumon, Garurumon, and Ancient Garurumon, we're going to swing once an Ancient Garurumon for security attack +1, because we're going to draw 2 immediately after it unsuspends. And then we can draw a 3rd card, and then attack for another security attack +1. That means off 1 single stack, we're going to take 4 securities away from our opponent's stack, and then we're also going to be up 3 more cards in just pure free card advantage, which is really, really cool and really kind of hard to deny in terms of power level. But the other cool thing with this Garurumon is that it allows us to kind of take out our opponent's smaller body, so we don't have to waste our Ancient Garurumon attack on that Digimon. So if we have the Garurumon on top of this Garurumon, we can attack like a tapped Vmon or a tapped Bushiagumon, just something small that is going to see a lot of play this format, that is generally going to survive. We can attack over it, unsuspend it immediately with its own effect, get whatever draw or any extra inheritable that we have down here, and then because it's going to be unsuspended, we can go into Ancient Garurumon on top of this Garurumon, and then be able to attack twice with the Ancient Garurumon as well. So we technically get 3 attacks, I guess, out of one single stack, but just having that little inheritable allows us to kind of not have to burn our very powerful DP swings on very small bodies. To round off our ultimates, we're playing 3 copies of Beowulfmon and 2 copies of ArrowVidramon. Now, the Beowulf is here because it's another search target for Strabimon, and sometimes we have to move out of our raising a little bit earlier than we'd like to, and what Beowulf does is that if we have a hybrid in its source, it cannot be attacked. So we can swing with jamming with Beowulf and generally know that it's going to be safe. Now, keep in mind, there are certain matchups in which it's not always going to be safe because our opponent still plays a lot of removal, but this is generally here as a pick against yellow War Greymon, because they can't like attack into it with War Greymon and then pick up a security to kill something else and then attack into your security after the fact. The only way they can eliminate this is that they would have to attack with War Greymon into your security, pick up a security to reduce it by 6,000, and then they would have to have something like a Koromon to take the additional 1,000 off. And a lot of War Greymon decks are split between whether or not they want to play the Koromon egg primarily or they want to play the Upamon egg primarily. And I'm seeing a lot more lists playing Upamon nowadays, which is why I felt that Beowulf was kind of a safe inclusion, because it's just generally going to stick, and then when it goes back into your turn, you can just evolve it into an Ancient Garurumon after the fact and just kind of finish your opponent off because you're able to get a couple quick pot shots into Beowulf. And then the 2 ArrowVidramon here are, it's got another cool inheritable where if it unsuspends, it gains a bonus effect. In this case, it actually gains jamming. But it also allows us to, when we digivolve ArrowVidramon himself, unsuspend another one of our blue Digimon if we have a blue Tamer in play. And there's just a lot of like cool scenarios where you can just get extra bonus attacks in, depending on how you've built your stacks. And just as an example, in the one match we had against our Imperial Dramon, our opponent used Puppetmon, put us to 10. We had 2 tapped Digimon, one of which was a champion, one of which was an Ancient Garurumon. We're able to evolve the champion into ArrowVidramon, untap the Ancient Garurumon, and then we evolved the stack that had the tapped ArrowVidramon into another Ancient Garurumon. We attacked with the first Ancient Garurumon and was able to untap both copies now of Ancient Garurumon. So it kind of like completely outplayed the entire puppet scenario, which was actually really cool. But the reason I played it primarily was just to give it jamming. Unfortunately, 13,000 DP is not enough to generally survive this format because we do have a lot of like Chaosmons and Valorarm that cap out at 14,000. But for the most part, 13 is relatively safe. The only matchup where it actually matters is green, because something like Nidhogg is 13,000. But if you're talking yellow, War and Mastamon cap out at 11 and 12 respectively. Green generally caps out at 12 with something like Hercules Terrymon, or 11 if they're playing the Grand Kuwagamon equivalent as well. Red generally caps out at 12 if they're playing something like Blitz Greymon. Even black caps out at something like 12 if they're playing Craniumon, I believe. And I can't quite remember Blastmon. I think he's 12. He could be 13. Either way, jamming is just here to kind of give you another layer of protection if you feel it necessary, depending on the matchup. So then on to the Megas. We're playing 4 copies of the Ancient Garurumon, like we said. Don't really need to go over him. He's the heart and soul of the deck. But another card that we're playing that, again, you've probably read it once and threw it into a box and never looked at it again. This is the starter deck Metal Garurumon. And this card is just, when attacking, just unsuspend it. So it's basically like your 5th and 6th copies of Ancient Garurumon, although it's a little bit worse in terms of what it actually brings to the table. It's more capacity to just give you that double swing that unlocks all your inheritables. And it's just an extra good body that does pretty much the exact same thing that we want from Ancient Garurumon. The unfortunate part is that it costs 4, and I've been on the fence whether or not I want to keep this card or not. But honestly, all day it performed really well. It performed as a good suitable replacement if we couldn't draw our copies of Ancient Garurumon. And the fact that it has Garurumon in its name means that we're also going to get a free draw here. We're also going to get security attack +1 here. It can also be untapped with Ancient Garurumon itself if it's also suspended and we have another stack built up. So just there's a lot of like random synergies with this card that I couldn't deny, and I'm kind of super glad that I threw it in last minute. Originally, these were actually 2 copies of Omnimon, but I swapped them out just to have more Megas, just to be able to see them more often and more consistently. Then to round out the deck, we're playing 4 copies of Hammerspark. It's a blue deck. You need Hammerspark. 3 copies of Cockado's Breath. This is to compensate for the lack of Omnimon, because we need to have more removal, and we need to have more powerful cards in our security. If our opponent's playing a deck that's equally as aggressive, it just helps them kind of keep their tempo off while we slowly build up our stack in our raising area to just go swing for the fences later. And finally, as we've discussed, 4 copies of Davis, just because that gives us more capacity to search for pretty much anything we need at any given point in time, and it already has synergy with the hybrids in the form of Lobomon as well. So yeah, that is the Ancient Garurumon deck that I was able to pilot to a second place finish at my local at Three Kingdoms Games. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you have any thoughts on how to build this deck differently, if you think that I might have done something wrong, if you think I might have taken an incorrect theory or strategy into this, please let me know. I love hearing your thoughts, and I love interacting with you guys. If you like what you see here, please leave this video a thumbs up so we know that this content is kind of reaching you guys, and it's, what you guys like to see. And if you like what we do here at the Overground, please consider giving us a subscribe and help us reach our newest goal for 500 subs by the end of the month. I have been Mike, aka Synaku, once again. Thanks a lot for watching the video, guys. I will see you.